Vengeance!
Welcome to another top 5 with Kris 05, guys. Today we're gonna look at the best performing decks after the mini set. As you know, I gave the meta 1 week so we can actually see what are the top decks and not just the flavor of the day, so I hope you find this video helpful. As always, we will do an overview of each deck, see its win rates, check out the mulligan guide with and without the coin, and see if it's worth crafting, as well as what are the other good archetypes for that specific class. I'm also excited to announce that I'm gonna start a new series on the channel, where I will do my best to give you guys all of the information for a specific class. So we can go over what is the best performing deck for the class, what is the cheapest well-performing deck for the class, as well as what are the other working archetypes for it. And I will let you guys decide what class I should cover next. All you have to do is write down in the comments below what class you want to see first, and I will do the new video on the weekend, depending on how many votes each class got. I would really appreciate it if you drop a like on the video if you find it helpful, and also it would be awesome if you guys actually subscribe to the channel, cause literally 75% of you haven't, even though you're still watching. Thanks for that at least. But now, let's get into the top 5 decks. The first one on the list has to be Enrage Warrior again. Enrage Warrior seems to be all the rage right now, and it's having crazy high win rates, especially in top 1000 Legend, so that means a lot. It literally has above 60% win rate in top 1000 Legend for the past 3 days, meaning that you can have a lot more from Diamond to Legend, as long as you know what you're doing with the deck. It is definitely not an easy deck to pilot, and I know that from experience. It can feel very awkward, but it is very rewarding once you make it click. You have several win conditions with the deck, either tempoing out your good early game minions, overwhelming your opponent with your big Blood Boil Brutes and Bomb Anglers. You can also OTK your opponent with Grommash, or you can even just out-sustain them with your huge armor gaining combo. The deck has a ton of card draw with your Battle Rage, and you also have your weapon synergy card draw with Cash, Ankar, and Cutting Class. The win rates for the deck are pretty good. The worst class you can face would be Paladin, but you're also not gonna be happy against Highlander Priest and Big Warrior as well. Other than that, everything is very deep in the green, so climbing should not be an issue. For the mulligan, you will always want to keep your Ankar, Sky Raider, and Wormhole Challenger when you're going first. If you don't have Ankar, you can keep Corsair Cash instead, but don't keep both of them at the same time obviously, cause you're only running 2 weapons on the deck. Sword Eater is also gonna be a very good keep for you because it's an absolutely busted card. I would not advise you to keep Risky Skipper and Armor Smith against most matchups, unless you're sure you're against something very fast and aggressive. You could consider doing some synergies with Wormhole Challenger, in which case you can keep the Shield of Honor, but try not to get baited into keeping it too much. 1 second, the situation is pretty much the same. The stats show that Armor Smith becomes a lot more keepable, but again, don't get baited into keeping it way too much. Cards you should obviously never keep would be Grommash, Kor'kron Elite, and usually Blood Boil Brute and Battle Rage. I'm not sure why these stats show that Corsair Cash is such a bad keep when you're going second, when we all know it isn't. But obviously again, you get to keep only the Ankar or the Corsair Cash, never both. The deck is not too expensive and it's definitely very worth according to the win percentages, but keep in mind that in 2 months things are gonna change drastically for it. We are hearing that the classic set is gonna get reworked, so Grommash might not be the same, and we all know that Ankar, Risky Skipper, and a few other good cards are also leaving, so there's that as well. Other than that, there are plenty of other good warrior decks out there, some of which would be Control Warrior, Bomb Warrior, Big Warrior, and even Pirate Warrior is starting to see play again. Next up, let's talk about Ram Paladin, which seemed to be a meme deck at the start, but it's actually having 60+% win rates right now. The deck received some support from the mini set, in the form of the Armor Vendor and the new Windfury Rush Murloc. And now the deck took a more Murloc heavy approach, and is abusing the Allura and Tip the Scales combo. You might have noticed that you don't actually run a spell that can trigger Allura, but you also have the coin and the spells you get from Wandmaker, so it should be working most of the time. The deck can be very high rolly, and it usually is. And with the early tempo you get from your Murlocs, you usually guarantee that you get to curve out into your big boys. The only dragon you're running in the deck is Nozdormu, and with the Red Scale Dragon Tamer, you basically guarantee drawing him every time. You have to be careful when you're using Nozdormu the Timeless though, because if you don't have any high cost cards in your hand, you don't really want to be playing him early, giving the opponent the play. For the matchups, Mage would not be too good for you, in the form of Highlander Mage and Mazaki Mage, and also other versions of Ram Paladin could be a problem as well, but literally everything else is green. And even the ones I said are just barely below 50%, so it should really be doing very well for you. The best performing deck I'm giving you right now doesn't have that big of a sample size, but you still get the idea for the mulligan. You will always want to keep Nozdormu if you don't have your red scale Dragon Tamer already. Allura's gonna be a good keep, especially if you have the Wand Maker, and you can pick some of your good early drops too. You obviously do not want to keep any of the old gods in your starting hand, because you want to give them some time for them to actually accumulate some value in them. When going second, again, Allura, Red Scale Dragon Tamer, Armor Vendor, and Nozdormu would be your best bets. The weapon is also not bad, but don't get confused keeping both Allura and Tip the Scales in the same hand. And also don't keep Tip the Scales if you're not gonna have a way to ramp into them too. This deck is a bit on the expensive side, but most of the expensive cards will remain in standard. Tip the Scales is leaving, so I guess it's not gonna be so Murloc heavy after the rotation, but it's probably gonna find a way. There are plenty of other good Paladin decks out there right now, but the best performing ones are Pure Paladin, Libroom Paladin, and Dual Paladin. Next up, let's talk about the absolutely cheapest deck out there that is performing above 60% win rate from Diamond to Legend. Token Gibberling Druid. The deck is really super cheap, costing a little over 2000 dust, and it consists of nothing but spells and 2 Gibberlings. It can be super tempo-y early, or you can abuse the Locust for a huge mid-game too. It has great card draw with the Fungal and Rising Winds too. You have a ton of ramp with Innervate and Bloom, and you can discover some cool spells with the studies as well. The rest of it is basically buffs and tokens. Again, the matchups for it are pretty much green all across. Aggro Demon Hunter might be a problem, Highlander Mage as well, World Kick Rogue as well, and Control Warlock too, but anything else is pretty much 50% and above. In the mulligan, you basically have 2 game plans, and you have to decide there. If you have the Gibberling, you will want your Adorable Infestation and other good cheap spells. But if you don't have the Gibberling, you can decide to go for the Fungal Fortunes into the Locusts. When you're going second, the Gibberling becomes even more important, because you have 1 extra token with the coin. The deck definitely seems very worth crafting, because it only costs 2000 dust. I'm not too sure how well it will survive after the rotation, but since it's so cheap, it's probably gonna be worth it for you if you want to climb some easy ranks. Other than that, we have a heavier Trent Druid, Guardian Druid is still working, Spell Druid with Ysera and Exotic Mount Sailor as well, and even Malagos with Geppetto. Now, let's talk about another super cheap deck, Zoolock. We already basically talked about this deck in the last top 5 if I'm not mistaken, or the top 5 before that. But yeah, it's still doing crazy well, with 60% win rate from Diamond to Legend and even in top 1000 Legend. It only runs 1 legendary in the form of the Prime, so it is no surprise it costs barely 4000 dust. You have your Pain Dark Glare synergy so you can cheat out mana, and the 2 Flesh Giants that can drop as soon as turn 4. Card draw is ensured through your hero power, and you also can discard your Hand of Gul'dan. You have a good amount of healing with the Manari, and you have plenty of good early game minions, so you can curve out well. The matchups are very populated, and this is how they look like. Aggro Demon Hunter might be a problem, Ramp Paladin as well, most of the rogues will not be too great, but still above 45% win rate, and Control Warrior can be somewhat of a problem too. But all in all, you should be doing just alright. For the mulligan, when you're starting first, Hand of Gul'dan would not be a bad keep, cause you usually have a way to discard it early, through your expired merchants or through the rusher. Spirit Jailer is always gonna be a great keep for you, and so will Dark Glare with the Tour Guide and the Flame Imp, and the Prime is also pretty good. And if you have the Dark Glare, Raise That can also be very tempting. When you're going second, again, the Prime, Flame Imp, Hand of Gul'dan, Tour Guide, Dark Glare, Spirit Jailer, Voidwalker, and Raise That would be your best bets. But if you have Hand of Gul'dan, Expired Merchant also makes a lot of sense. And even Wriggling Horror sometimes. Don't get baited into keeping the Giant, your Wicked Whispers, and Soulfire, and same goes for the Broomstick. Again, the deck seems pretty worth crafting since it's so cheap and so well performing, but keep in mind that we're gonna be losing 1 huge synergy for it. Expired Merchant is rotating out, and there are plenty of classic cards in here as well, so nobody knows what exactly is gonna happen with those. If we don't get a replacement for the Expired Merchant for another cheap, high-cost discarding card, the deck might struggle with its card draw, but time will tell. Other than that, Control Warlock is doing pretty good, and even Quest Warlock is starting to see play, but it seems like Galakrond Lock is starting to fall in power. And the last deck on the list is again gonna be the Face Hunter from my last top 5. Like I told you, Face Hunter always thrives in unrefined metas, and that is what we're having right now, so it's no surprise it's still smashing face. Again, it's a pretty cheap deck, and it can become even cheaper if you don't use Dragonbane. The other legendary here is obviously the Rifle, but other than that, the deck is pretty cheap, and the cards we're using are pretty standard too. The only secrets we're running are the Explosive Trap and the Pack Tactics. And Pack Tactics is insanely good in this deck because you have so many good Death Rattle minions which you would love to get a second copy of. No need to talk much about Face Hunter cause it's painfully obvious what is the idea of the deck. So let's move down to the win rates. The only problem you're gonna be facing would be with Paladins and with Zoolocks, but the matchup section is not as populated as we would like it to be. So there might be other bad matchups here which we don't see yet. For the mulligan, when you're starting first, if you don't have Scavenger Ingenuity yet, you would like to be keeping your Face Stalker and Warportinger. Torguide is gonna be a great keep for you, and so is Inner Pit, and Imprisoned Felmok can be pretty good too. Even though the weapon is a 4-drop, if you're curving into it, it's also not gonna be a bad keep. When you're going second, the situation is pretty much the same. But even Dragonbane apparently becomes a lot more keepable, even though I'm not too sure about that. Don't get baited into keeping any secrets in your starting hand, and all of your free drops are not gonna be great keeps too. This is another pretty cheap and pretty worth deck to craft, and it's probably gonna remain relevant even after the rotation and the rework of the classic set, cause you know, Hunter goes face. Other than that, you can go for Highlander instead, but keep in mind that the price tag is 3 times higher. For the classes I didn't feature in the video, now it's time to mention what are their best archetypes. For Demon Hunter, we still have Aggro Demon Hunter and Lifesteal Demon Hunter, and there's a new Fell Demon Hunter that's also doing pretty good, but let's not forget Soul Demon Hunter can also do good things and good hands. For Mage, Secret Mage is still at the top, but Small Spell Mage can also do crazy things in skilled hands. Highlander Mage is doing okay, and Mozaki Mage started seeing better win rates after people started realizing how they have to play it. For Priest, your best bet would be Highlander Priest, but Big Priest also makes some sense. With Rogue, we have plenty of good working archetypes, but Weapon Rogue, World Kick Rogue, Secret Rogue, and Stealth Rogue would be at the top. And with Shaman, you can go for Totem, Aggro, or Evolve. So that's gonna be it for this video, guys. Hope this top 5 helps you pick your next best meta deck. Don't forget to drop a comment under the video telling me what class I should make for the next video. And while you're there, the like and subscribe buttons are also close. Thanks again for watching, I'm Kris05, and I'll see you in my next video or stream.